Hi, this is George Alger, and welcome to this segment of Our Ventura TV. Today we're going to be talking about couples and relationships. And our guest experts today are Leon Berg and Glori Zeltzer. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having us.
Let's start with you, Glori. So how was it that you guys came to be experts on relationships?
Well, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I've been practicing for a little over 30 years. And Leon and I met about 13 years ago. You want to say what you've been doing?
Well, for many, many years, 25 or so years, I worked at a place called the Ojai Foundation, which is in the Upper Ojai Valley, a very beautiful educational retreat center. I was one of the founding members of it. And there I learned a particular way of communicating.
So on our second date, Leon made dinner and then invited me to do something different, he said. And so I said, okay, I'll see. And he had set up a couple pillows and a center with flowers and a candle. And we spent about 45 minutes just really sharing deeply what was important to us. And I was seduced. What's more seductive than a man who wants to know how you feel and share their feelings? And so from that's what we teach couples.
That's great. Well, let's get right into the topic here. So what is let's say, the greatest obstacle to men and women communicating effectively or getting along well?
Well, from my perspective, it's this inability to really listen deeply to each other. We have this capacity to listen, but we don't generally use it. We use it when we want to hear something that we like very often, but not when there's something that we don't want to hear. You know, we tend to shut off. So what we teach is the way to keep the channels open so that we're really receptive to what our partner wants to say to us.
Good. So could you give some example or advice on how someone could be a better listener?
Well, one of the things that we talk about is listening from our hearts. So when I'm listening from my heart, kind of using my heart brain instead of my head brain, I'm listening to understand. So Leon and I may have a different point of view. I like to talk about couples having, that we all have cross-cultural relationships. We're all brought up differently. So my point of view, my way, is going to be different from Leon's sometimes. So if we're listening with our hearts, we're listening with, for understanding, with empathy, not trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong, not listening for judgment. And so it opens up room for talking about things. A few years ago, we painted our house. It was getting worn out, and we live in a tract that looks like it was all painted by one painter, beiges and grays and browns. And we wanted something different. And I wanted a little more color, and Leon's idea looked like it would have been great in Tuscany. And so we took my ideas and his ideas, and it's like, I use this turtle as an illustrator. We put them together out here to see what were all of our ideas, not whose was right and wrong. And from that, we have a really beautifully colored house that fits in the neighborhood, and we both like.
Cool. Now let's suppose that you have some couples that are, they're sincerely interested in being good listeners. They really do want to have a good relationship. They really do want to have good communication. But there's a topic that's come up, and it's hot, let's say, and it's creating dissent and even argument. How can you, patch that up or make that, this work better? These two extremes that the partners might be representing.
Well, little turtle comes in here.
Okay.
We call this a talking piece. And the idea is that whoever holds the talking piece is the person that is speaking. And it's the job of the other person to really listen as openly as they're able to. What this does is it slows down the conversation. Okay? And that's vital when it's hot. When it's hot, you want to do whatever you can to cool things down. And slowing it down is an important part of that.
Okay, cool. I like that. Now, I would imagine, by the time couples are even contemplating, oh geez, how can I make our relationship better, they've already hit some kind of rocky road, all right? And so is there some advice you might convey to, to either prevent people from getting to these conflicts or putting them off? In other words, you have a young couple, or a new couple, I should say, and typically things go very well at that point, but then after some time they're not going as well, all right? So is there something that you could suggest you'd implement early on to ensure that you have fewer arguments, let's say, or that the arguments are going to come later in time?
Well, it's often that people think that a sign of a good relationship is no arguing. And really, if we're not arguing, we're avoiding often dealing with conflict. So there's arguing that ends up being productive, where we solve whatever the issue is. And there's arguing that's just fighting and nobody listening. And so what this does is it allows us to slow down and listen to each other's point of view, to understand it. It's also an opportunity for me to hear myself. And so what's creating the feeling I'm having? Where is that coming from? Often what arguing is an ineffective form of creating safety. So if we're in a conflict and maybe I'm yelling, my yelling is, I feel some separation and I'm unhappy, something's wrong, I'm sad, my feelings are hurt, and I don't know another way to express it. And so if I can yell, that's safer than feeling hurt. And maybe it doesn't feel good to Leon, and he walks out of the room, and that's also creating safety for himself. I don't know what to do with Glori. She's yelling at me. I don't know what to do with this. It's scary. We learn these things growing up. So if we learn more about ourselves, which this allows us to do, then we can learn how our patterns of communication, things that we've learned as children, affect how we are in relationships now. So these things are done because we think we're creating safety, but what they do is they create distance. And if it's left there, the distance just grows.
Good. Leon, let me ask you this. There's, whether it's true or not, there's a stereotype that men may be more reluctant to even, engage in relationship improving, let's put it that way. But what advice might you give to men who, are at least entertaining a notion in the back of their mind that, maybe there's something I should learn here? So what could you suggest to men in general to help improve their relationships?
I think underneath it all, men as well as women sort of yearn for deeper connection. And taking the time to cultivate that is worth the investment. It just takes time. It's not as threatening as it appears. I think as I was brought up in England, and young boys were taught very early not to cry. You never want to show that kind of weakness. We were raised to be tough, and there was a kind of image of what it was to be a man, and that image is really shifting. That image is sort of worn out, really, because it's gotten us into a lot of trouble. You only have to read the news, watch it on TV to see what difficulty the world is in, and it's largely because of these images we have that need to change.
Okay, good. And then let's suppose someone is really embracing the idea, yes, I know I could listen better, and in fact, I'd like to start today. So they were to go about that, and yet they're in the middle of some disagreement, and they find it very difficult to just sit there and listen with this, with this great disagreement, all right? Is there any other encouragement or advice you could give someone that says, look, you got to listen?
Explore. That we need to cultivate, instead of a fighting kind of attitude, an attitude of, wow, why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? What's really going on here? It's sort of an attitude of inquiry rather than a kind of reactive stance.
Good.
I could give you an example from us.
Okay.
Years ago, a typical conflict was, honey, I'd really like to go out to dinner tonight. And Leon's response would be, Can't we just stay home? I love your cooking. I'm a good cook, but I want to go out to dinner. And the story, and so we'd have conflict. The story beneath that was really me seeing going out to dinner as a date. It was a way to express love. And being turned down, I was interpreting as, well, he doesn't love me. So that conflict would continue with, can we go out to dinner? I'd rather stay home. I'd really love to go out to dinner. I'd rather stay home. Until we sat down and really looked at what's there underneath it. And I shared, as I just did, that I saw it as going on a date and something enjoyable, something different. And for Leon, he likes continuity. So he liked my cooking, but he also liked the predictability of it. He's not as adventurous of an eater as I am. So
I'm British.
So when we understood that, he understood what it meant to me, and I understood what it was like for him. And so then it wasn't about who was right or who was wrong. It just dropped the conflict.
That's a great example. Yeah, so that really highlights the importance of what you're saying, of truly listening. We're kind of running near the end of the show here, but I'm wondering if you both might offer any advice on, is there any observances that you could convey about women listening to men or men listening to women? You know, any peculiarities that are, you might say, or at least unique to, you know, men and women have different viewpoints on things, so it's listening for sure, but there's, you know, for men, maybe there's a different interpretation, and for women, maybe there's a different interpretation.
There's a marriage theorist who talks about accepting influence, which means I listen to your point of view and I take it in and kind of check and see how it feels to me, if I agree or not agree, and then act. And women are used to doing this. It's much more, that's a longer conversation, but women are used to doing that. Men traditionally have not needed to do that in relationship, and this researcher found that one of the signs of a successful relationship and longevity was men who are able to accept influence. So it's just listen. You don't have to do what your partner wants you to do. It's not about losing your integrity.
Nice, well said. Anything you want to add to that, Leon?
It's also about creating a time and place that's set aside for this kind of communication. That's really important. We encourage couples to set aside about an hour a week to really be together, to turn off the TV, the cell phones, and hopefully the kids are, you know, with a friend, and just sit with each other, be with each other, use the talking piece, and really listen to each other.
Well said.
And not to see this as a problem-solving tool.
Yeah.
The way it really works great is just to sit together and talk about just what's there, what we appreciate in each other.
Well said, I like that. Well, we're just about out of time here, so if we could wrap up with two things. Number one, is there a website that people could get more information from? And two, if there's a summating message you'd like to convey to the viewers, this would be the time.
Okay.
So the website is tools-for-togetherness.com. Toolsfortogetherness.com.
Good.
And a summating message, I think really taking the time to be with each other in this kind of really safe and secure way.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Leon. Thank you, Glori.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
This is George ALGER signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.